What if I told you that the very program designed to help unemployed workers actually keeps them unemployed longer? This isn't political rhetoric, it's economic reality backed by decades of empirical evidence. During my years studying labor markets and monetary policy at the University of Chicago, I've witnessed a fundamental misconception that has cost American workers millions of lost opportunities. Well-intentioned politicians promise to ease the pain of unemployment through extended benefits, yet the data reveals a troubling truth: these programs systematically discourage the very behavior that leads to reemployment. The evidence is clear, measurable, and consistent across different time periods and economic conditions. When we subsidize unemployment, we get more of it. When we make joblessness more comfortable, we extend its duration. This isn't theory, it's observable economic behavior that any honest analysis must acknowledge. Today, I'll show you exactly how unemployment benefits create the unemployment they claim to cure, and why market-based alternatives consistently produce better outcomes for workers and the economy. Chapter 1: The Economic Logic of Incentives. Every economic policy creates incentives, and human beings respond to those incentives in predictable ways. This fundamental principle, which I've observed throughout my career studying market behavior, applies directly to unemployment compensation. When government pays people not to work, it should surprise no one that fewer people choose to work. Yet policymakers consistently ignore this basic economic logic, preferring to focus on good intentions rather than observable results. Consider the mathematical reality facing an unemployed worker. If unemployment benefits replace 60 to 70% of previous wages, and finding a job requires time, effort, and often accepting initially lower pay, the rational calculation becomes clear. The opportunity cost of continued job searching decreases significantly when government subsidizes unemployment. Workers can afford to be more selective, to wait longer for the perfect opportunity, and to reject offers that might lead to better long-term prospects. During the 1970s, I analyzed employment data across different states with varying benefit levels. The pattern was unmistakable. States with more generous unemployment benefits consistently showed longer average unemployment duration. This wasn't coincidence, it was economic behavior responding to altered incentives. When New Jersey increased its benefit duration from 26 to 39 weeks, average unemployment duration increased by approximately 2.5 weeks. When Pennsylvania extended benefits to 65 weeks during recession, unemployment rates remained elevated long after economic recovery began in neighboring states with shorter benefit periods. The substitute effect operates powerfully here. Unemployment benefits make leisure relatively cheaper compared to work. They reduce the financial pressure that naturally motivates rapid reemployment. They transform unemployment from an urgent problem requiring immediate action into a temporarily comfortable situation allowing extended job search. While this might sound compassionate, the empirical evidence reveals its destructive consequences for workers themselves. Most importantly, this analysis doesn't require ideological assumptions about human nature. It simply recognizes that people respond rationally to the choices available to them. When we change the relative costs and benefits of different options, we change behavior in predictable directions. Unemployment benefits fundamentally alter the cost-benefit calculation of remaining unemployed versus accepting available work. Chapter 2: Historical Evidence from the Great Depression. The relationship between unemployment benefits and joblessness becomes starkly clear when we examine historical evidence, particularly from the Great Depression era when these programs first emerged on a large scale. My research with Anna Schwartz into monetary history revealed how government interventions consistently produced consequences opposite to their stated intentions, and unemployment compensation proved no exception. Before unemployment insurance existed in America, unemployment duration averaged 4 to 6 weeks even during economic downturns. Workers simply couldn't afford extended joblessness, so they accepted available work quickly or created their own opportunities through entrepreneurship. The absence of government support forced rapid adaptation and innovation. Local communities, families, and mutual aid societies provided temporary assistance, but this help came with strong social pressure to return to productive activity. When unemployment compensation programs expanded during the 1930s, duration patterns changed dramatically. Average unemployment spells increased to 12 to 15 weeks, even in regions where job opportunities remained available. Workers began treating unemployment as a temporary income source rather than an urgent problem requiring immediate solution. The program designed to provide security actually created insecurity by prolonging the period between productive employment opportunities. European data from the same period provides compelling comparative evidence. Britain, which implemented more generous unemployment benefits earlier than America, consistently showed higher unemployment rates and longer duration spells throughout the 1920s and 1930s. Germany's employment programs, which combined benefits with work requirements, produced faster reemployment rates than purely redistributive systems. France's regional variations in benefit generosity created natural experiments showing clear correlation between payment levels and unemployment duration. The most telling evidence comes from program terminations. When emergency unemployment extensions ended in various American regions during the late 1930s, employment rates increased rapidly within 2 to 3 months. Workers who had remained unemployed for extended periods suddenly found acceptable jobs or started small businesses. The opportunities had existed all along, government subsidies had simply reduced the incentive to pursue them actively. This historical analysis demonstrates that unemployment isn't primarily caused by lack of jobs, but by mismatch between worker expectations and available opportunities. Unemployment benefits sustain unrealistic expectations, preventing the wage and preference adjustments that naturally clear labor markets. The longer benefits continue, the greater this mismatch becomes, creating persistent unemployment that serves neither workers nor the economy. Chapter 3: The Search Theory Myth. Defenders of unemployment benefits often invoke search theory, the idea that these payments allow workers time to find better job matches, ultimately improving productivity and wages. This sounds reasonable in theory, but empirical evidence consistently contradicts this optimistic assumption. During my decades analyzing labor market data, I found that extended job search typically leads to worse, not better, employment outcomes. The search theory myth assumes that longer unemployment duration produces better job matches because workers can afford to be selective. However, real-world data shows the opposite pattern. Workers who remain unemployed longer generally accept jobs with lower wages and fewer advancement opportunities than those who find employment quickly. Skills atrophy during extended unemployment periods. Professional networks weaken. Employers view long unemployment spells as negative signals about worker quality or motivation. Consider the evidence from multiple recessions. Workers who exhausted unemployment benefits and continued searching independently typically found employment within 6 to 8 weeks of benefit termination. These positions offered comparable wages and similar advancement prospects to jobs found by workers who accepted employment while still receiving benefits. The additional search time subsidized by unemployment compensation produced no measurable improvement in job quality or worker satisfaction. The search theory also ignores how unemployment benefits change the nature of job searching itself. When financial pressure decreases, search effort often becomes less intensive and less focused. Workers can afford to maintain unrealistic wage expectations, to reject opportunities requiring geographic relocation, or to avoid jobs requiring new skill development. What appears to be selective searching often represents avoidance of necessary adaptations to changed economic conditions. Most fundamentally, The search theory assumes that good job matches depend primarily on extended searching rather than on-the-job learning and career development. But empirical evidence shows that most career advancement occurs through employment experience, not through prolonged unemployment. Workers who accept available positions quickly, even at initially lower wages, typically achieve better long-term career outcomes than those who search extensively while unemployed. I invite you to examine this evidence yourself. Compare career trajectories of workers who found employment quickly after job loss with those who remained unemployed for extended periods. The data consistently shows that rapid reemployment, even in imperfect positions, leads to better long-term outcomes than prolonged searching subsidized by unemployment benefits. The market rewards productive activity, not extended contemplation about ideal opportunities. Chapter 4: International comparisons prove the point. International evidence provides perhaps the most compelling demonstration of how unemployment benefits increase joblessness. During my research into comparative economic systems, I consistently found inverse relationships between benefit generosity and employment rates across developed nations. Countries with more generous unemployment compensation systematically experience higher unemployment rates and longer unemployment duration. Consider the stark differences between European and American labor markets throughout the 1980s and 1990s. European nations with replacement rates of 70 to 80% of previous wages showed unemployment rates consistently 2 to 4 percentage points higher than the United States, where benefits typically replaced 40 to 50% of wages. France, Germany, and Italy, with the most generous systems, experienced chronic unemployment rates approaching 10 to 12%, while America maintained rates of 5 to 7% during the same periods. The Nordic countries provide particularly instructive examples. Sweden's unemployment rate averaged 2 to 3% during the 1970s when benefits were modest and time-limited. As the system became increasingly generous throughout the 1980s, unemployment rose to 8 to 10% and remained elevated even during economic expansion periods. Denmark experienced similar patterns, with unemployment rising consistently as benefit duration and replacement rates increased. Most revealing are the natural experiments created when countries reformed their unemployment systems. When Britain reduced benefit generosity and tightened eligibility requirements during the Thatcher era, unemployment fell dramatically within 18 months. New Zealand's comprehensive welfare reforms in the early 1990s produced similar results. Unemployment rates dropped from 11% to 6% as benefits became less generous and more conditional on job-seeking behavior. Germany provides an excellent case study in both directions. East German unemployment remained persistently high after reunification, partly because Western unemployment benefits were extended to the eastern regions, creating incentives for extended joblessness in areas where rapid employment growth was occurring. Later, Chancellor Schroeder's Hartz reforms in the early 2000s reduced benefit duration and replacement rates, leading to Germany's impressive employment recovery despite global economic challenges. The most dramatic evidence comes from countries that eliminated unemployment benefits entirely during economic crises. Ireland temporarily suspended payments during fiscal emergencies, leading to immediate employment increases as workers accepted previously rejected opportunities. These examples demonstrate that unemployment benefits aren't necessary for worker security. They actively prevent the labor market adjustments that create genuine employment opportunities. International data consistently confirms that generous unemployment benefits create, rather than cure, unemployment problems. Countries with market-based approaches to temporary income support consistently achieve better employment outcomes for their citizens. Chapter 5: The Dependency Trap: Why Benefits Become Permanent. Unemployment benefits create more than temporary incentive problems. They often become permanent lifestyle subsidies that trap workers in cycles of dependency. This transformation from temporary assistance to long-term support represents one of the most destructive unintended consequences of well-intentioned social policy. During my analysis of welfare programs, I've documented how unemployment compensation increasingly functions as disguised permanent income transfer rather than genuine temporary assistance. The dependency mechanism operates through several channels. First, repeated cycles of unemployment and benefits create familiarity with the system, reducing psychological barriers to program participation. Workers learn to time job searches around benefit periods, accepting employment just before benefits expire, then finding reasons to return to unemployment when eligible for new benefit periods. This pattern creates artificial employment instability that serves neither workers nor employers. Second, unemployment benefits often become integrated with other welfare programs, creating benefit cliffs that penalize employment. A worker receiving unemployment compensation may also qualify for housing assistance, food stamps, and healthcare subsidies. Accepting employment can trigger simultaneous loss of multiple benefits, creating effective marginal tax rates exceeding 100%. This means workers actually lose money by working compared to remaining unemployed, a completely perverse incentive structure. Consider the evidence from long-term benefit recipients. Data consistently shows that workers who exhaust standard unemployment benefits and continue receiving extended benefits rarely return to sustained employment. They cycle between temporary jobs and unemployment, never developing the consistent work patterns that build career advancement. The system designed to provide security actually creates chronic instability and reduced lifetime earnings. The psychological effects prove equally destructive. Extended unemployment benefits can erode work habits, reduce job search intensity, and create learned helplessness about employment prospects. Workers begin identifying as unemployed rather than as temporarily between jobs, fundamentally changing their relationship to work and personal responsibility. This shift from temporary assistance to identity formation represents the transformation from help to harm. Most concerning is how benefit dependency spreads across generations. Children growing up in households where unemployment benefits provide regular income learn to view government payments as normal income sources rather than emergency assistance. This intergenerational transmission of dependency attitudes perpetuates cycles of reduced work attachment and government reliance that serve no one's long-term interests. I encourage you to consider whether policies that create these dependency patterns truly help workers or actually harm their long-term prospects. The evidence suggests that rapid reemployment, even in initially imperfect jobs, produces better lifetime outcomes than extended government support that discourages workforce attachment. Chapter 6: How Benefits Distort the Entire Labor Market. Unemployment benefits don't just affect individual workers, they systematically distort the entire labor market, creating inefficiencies that reduce wages, limit job creation, and prevent the natural adjustments that maintain economic equilibrium. These market-wide effects, which I've studied extensively through comparative analysis of different regional policies, demonstrate how seemingly targeted interventions create economy-wide distortions. The wage distortion operates through several mechanisms. When unemployment benefits provide substantial income replacement, workers can afford to reject jobs offering wages only moderately above benefit levels. This creates artificial wage floors that prevent market-clearing wage adjustments during economic downturns. Instead of wages falling to levels that encourage hiring and clear labor markets, they remain elevated, prolonging unemployment and preventing recovery. Seasonal industries provide clear examples of these distortions. Construction, agriculture, and tourism naturally experience cyclical employment patterns. Before generous unemployment benefits, workers in these industries either saved during peak seasons, found alternative winter employment, or migrated to regions with different seasonal patterns. Unemployment compensation eliminated these natural adjustment mechanisms, allowing workers to remain in seasonal locations collecting benefits rather than pursuing year-round employment opportunities. The job creation effects prove equally significant. Employers facing uncertain demand often prefer temporary or part-time positions that limit unemployment insurance liability. The tax structure financing unemployment benefits creates incentives for businesses to rely more heavily on overtime from existing workers rather than hiring additional employees. This reduces overall employment opportunities and concentrates work among fewer workers. Regional labor mobility suffers dramatically under generous unemployment systems. Workers receiving benefits can afford to remain in economically declining areas rather than relocating to regions with better employment prospects. This prevents the natural population movements that historically maintained regional economic balance. Areas with persistent unemployment problems often show this pattern. Generous benefits enable workers to remain in places where jobs have disappeared rather than moving to areas where opportunities exist. The regulatory burden compounds these problems. Unemployment insurance systems require extensive bureaucracy to determine eligibility, monitor job search efforts, and prevent fraud. These administrative costs represent deadweight losses that reduce overall economic efficiency. Employers must maintain detailed records, participate in appeals processes, and navigate complex regulations that divert resources from productive activities. Most importantly, unemployment benefits prevent the creative destruction process that drives economic progress. During economic transitions, resources need to move from declining industries to growing sectors. Unemployment compensation allows workers to delay these necessary adjustments, slowing the reallocation of human capital toward more productive uses. This resistance to change ultimately reduces economic growth and limits opportunities for all workers. Chapter 7: Market-based alternatives that actually work. Rather than simply criticizing existing policies, let me present market-based alternatives that consistently produce better outcomes for workers while maintaining necessary safety nets. These approaches, which I've advocated throughout my career, recognize that genuine security comes from employment opportunities, not government payments. The empirical evidence for these alternatives demonstrates that we can protect workers without creating the perverse incentives that prolonged unemployment. Private unemployment insurance represents the most promising alternative. Under this system, workers and employers could purchase insurance policies covering temporary income loss due to unemployment. Private insurers would have strong incentives to minimize benefit duration and encourage rapid reemployment. They would develop job placement services, retraining programs, and relocation assistance that genuinely help workers rather than simply providing payments. Singapore and Chile have implemented versions of this approach with remarkable success. Individual unemployment accounts offer another market-based solution. Workers could contribute to personal accounts during employment, accessing these funds during unemployment periods. Account balances would belong to workers, creating incentives to minimize withdrawals and return to work quickly. Unused balances could become retirement savings, aligning long-term worker interests with efficient labor market behavior. This approach eliminates moral hazard while providing genuine security. Employer-based solutions prove equally effective. Companies could establish internal job placement services, retraining programs, and temporary work opportunities for laid-off employees. Some progressive employers already provide severance packages, outplacement services, and preferential rehiring for former employees. These private initiatives consistently achieve faster reemployment than government programs because they align employer and worker interests. Geographic mobility vouchers could replace extended unemployment benefits for workers in economically declining regions. Rather than subsidizing extended unemployment in areas where jobs have disappeared, government could provide relocation assistance to help workers move to areas with better opportunities. This approach recognizes economic reality while providing genuine help rather than false hope. Work-sharing programs offer temporary alternatives during economic downturns. Instead of laying off workers who then collect unemployment benefits, companies could reduce hours for all employees, with workers receiving partial unemployment compensation for lost hours. This maintains employment relationships, preserves job skills, and allows rapid expansion when demand recovers. Several European countries use this approach effectively during recessions. Most importantly, removing regulatory barriers to job creation provides the foundation for all other reforms. Reducing minimum wage requirements, employment taxes, and hiring regulations would increase demand for workers, creating more opportunities for rapid reemployment. The best unemployment policy is full employment policy, creating conditions where jobs are plentiful and unemployment remains brief and voluntary. These market-based alternatives consistently outperform government unemployment programs because they align incentives correctly, encourage productive behavior, and adapt to changing economic conditions. They provide genuine security through opportunity rather than false security through dependency. Conclusion. The evidence is overwhelming and consistent. Unemployment benefits increase unemployment duration, reduce job search intensity, create dependency patterns, and distort labor markets in ways that harm workers and the economy. This isn't ideological assertion, it's empirical reality documented across different time periods, countries, and economic conditions. Every honest analysis of unemployment compensation reaches the same conclusion: programs designed to help unemployed workers actually prolong their unemployment and reduce their long-term prospects. The solution isn't to abandon concern for temporarily unemployed workers, but to replace counterproductive policies with market-based alternatives that provide genuine help rather than harmful subsidies. Private insurance, individual accounts, employer-based assistance, and mobility programs all offer superior outcomes because they align incentives correctly and encourage rapid return to productive employment. The choice is clear: we can continue policies that subsidize unemployment and wonder why joblessness persists, or we can embrace market solutions that create opportunities and restore the dignity of work. The evidence supports freedom, opportunity, and market-based solutions. The question is whether we'll follow the evidence or continue ignoring it in favor of good intentions that produce bad results.